On November 16, 1974, humanity made its first official attempt to establish contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. A radio telescope in Russia sent a signal toward the constellation Hercules. The message contained basic information about human civilization, formulas of fundamental chemical elements, drawings of DNA, a model of the solar system, and even a diagram of our Earth-based telescope, a greeting to our brothers in the universe. Some researchers believe that a response was received, and it happened on August 20th, 2001. On that very day, drawings appeared in a wheat field near a British observatory in the village of Boltuni. The images were visible only from a great height. One of them was the face of a humanoid. Next to it was an image resembling the message sent from Earth, but it contained several differences. The composition and the structure of the DNA spiral were different. In place of the human figure, there was a 1-meter-tall humanoid with a large head and long arms. Their sun is half the size of ours. 9 planets orbit it, 2 of which are inhabited. If one truly believes that intelligent brothers in the universe exist and are not too far from our planet, then it means that contact with them is possible. Attempts to achieve this are being made all over the world. Astronomers send signals and wait for a response. Sometimes something does come from the depths of space, and scientists even manage to decipher some of the extraterrestrial messages. A year later, in the same place, a huge image appeared, a humanoid in a frame and a circular disc about 50 meters in diameter. This message contained text encoded using the American Standard Code for Information Interchange. The message was deciphered, and independent studies confirmed its content. Beware of those bearing false gifts and their deceitful promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good nearby. We oppose deception. End of communication.
Pictograms were used for the first time. Ciphers and codes that until then had been used only by humans.
The British government was quick to declare these drawings a hoax. However, to create such a large-scale image in a wheat field, one would need an army of personnel with aerial coordination tools and several weeks of work. Yet the patterns appeared within a minute. A message that recently came from Bulgaria caused a bombshell effect. It turned out that while all other astronomers were listening to space with radio telescopes, extraterrestrials had established contact with the Institute of Space Research of the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. It all began when Professor Filipov, the Institute's deputy director, met Mariana Zvezdnaya, a resident of Sofia. An architect by profession, she had spent years studying crop circles and claimed to have developed a means of communicating with those responsible for their creation. Through her, Professor Filipov and 2 of his colleagues decided to seek answers to their questions.
Extraterrestrial civilizations and these figures clearly appear to carry some kind of informational content. With each passing year, they become more and more complex. Experts have been studying them for a long time.
The answers were expected to arrive through crop circles. Filipov approached the experiment with skepticism, but decided to take the risk and pursue this unconventional path.
I'm an astrophysicist. I study black holes. And what do black holes have in common with extraterrestrial civilizations? No one has ever seen either of them. Yet they still exist, both of them.
The questions were given to the woman acting as a contact. They were carefully formulated and included scientific and control questions, ones she could not have devised answers to on her own. Among other things, Bulgarian astronomers wanted to know how humanity might establish permanent communication with another intelligence, what had occurred on the moon during the American landing, how a new canonical crisis could be prevented, along with many other questions. The scientists delivered the message and began to wait.
From the very beginning, we tend to look for those who are similar to us.
Perhaps we assume that they created us. In other words, something resembling themselves. I maintain, and I am absolutely certain, that humanoid beings exist in our galaxy. But why don't they make contact with us?
Most likely because we are too primitive, intellectually. After all, if we were suddenly to encounter an ant, how would we communicate with it?
We wouldn't.
And that is precisely why they do not send us signals. Their message seems to be reasonable, learn, and grow.
Professor Luchizar Filipov studied and defended his dissertation in Moscow. He was part of a circle of individuals in the Soviet Union who were involved in creating a project node within a wider network. Since then, the dream of establishing contact has never faded. Together with his colleagues, the astrophysicist sent questions into the unknown, and, according to the claims, a response arrived through contact. Mariana discovered crop circles that were said to contain the answers sent to the scientists. According to this account, extraterrestrials have long been living among us, maintaining constant observation. But humanity is not yet sufficiently developed to communicate with another form of intelligence. The visitors are not hostile. Rather, they appear to want to help. What troubles them is the way we treat the planet's natural environment. The scientists did receive answers to their questions.
Those were answers as well, and I should add, remarkably intelligent ones. They advised us to destroy all weapons and put an end to internal wars. They said that only then would the economic crisis come to an end. It was an extraordinarily intelligent response.
It was also stated that contact with an extraterrestrial civilization would not be established through radio waves, but through the power of thought. For this to happen, however, humans would need to learn how to use both hemispheres of the brain simultaneously and undergo a profound spiritual transformation.
Our society is not ready to accept too many things. If extraterrestrial civilizations were to suggest that we stop eating meat, that our metabolism should change, it would lead to the ruin of everyone involved in the food industry. If they were to propose that we use clean energy, as was already said at the beginning of the 20th century, that such sources exist and that we should not rely on oil, then those who extract and sell oil would fall into crisis.
The great scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky believed that the higher one advances into space, the more morally developed a person must be. For some reason, he was convinced that extraterrestrials were exactly like that.
He believed that if they are highly advanced, then they are capable of influencing the physical body, and therefore they must be benevolent, generous, and humane. He believed that a cosmic community exists, and for humanity to enter this cosmic community, even to truly enter space, we must first rise to a much higher moral level. Until we elevate ourselves morally far beyond where we are now, such contact simply will not take place. Not on equal terms. And if we were to enter the cosmic community as equals, it would give a new impulse to the development of science, technology, the arts, and more. That was his plan. A plan spanning 1 million years.
In 1932, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky turned 75. It should be noted that this anniversary was widely celebrated across the Soviet Union. To mark the occasion, it was decided to publish a 2-volume collection of the inventor's works. The first volume was prepared and approved without hesitation, but the second was devoted to contacts with other civilizations, and that is where members of the Central Committee began to hesitate. What if there really were others on distant planets? What if the local proletariat had its own party and its own genius of all planets and peoples? In the end, in order not to unsettle the public with the idea of cosmic multi-party systems, it was decided not to publish Tsiolkovsky at all. Instead, the authorities limited themselves to commemorative awards and a banquet. It is hard to believe, but modern cosmonauts can confirm not only Tsiolkovsky's ideas about the sensations of weightlessness, but also his theories concerning extraterrestrial intelligence. They see strange things in orbit.
When a person begins to resemble or mentally inhabit the image of a dinosaur, they start to see and feel something. This is the kind of experience a friend of mine once described to me. He had been in space and claimed to have lived through it firsthand, right down to vivid visions of dinosaur-like creatures moving in a herd down a slope, chasing, forgive the expression, a female, or alternatively, shifting between different realities within a single dream, so to speak. All of it happened rapidly. At one moment, he found himself in the Middle Ages, among knightly castles, fragments of another era. Then the narrative shifted again, into the future where the planet was dominated by two male figures, advanced beings, as if evolved humans living within a far more developed civilization.
All of these facts were suppressed in the Soviet Union, and even today the names of the cosmonauts involved remain undisclosed.
Later, preparations began for a long-duration mission involving an American for the first time. Foreman. He was a military man and a physician with extensive experience. Up to that point, American missions aboard the space shuttle had been very short. This was the first time they were to enter the Mir station for nearly half a year, and I remember thinking it would be tragic if he were the one to fly and encounter this phenomenon. Given his medical and flight training, he would be able to recognize it immediately. He would document everything, describe it in detail, and then say, "So the Russians flew for 30 years and felt nothing."
В правом иллюминаторе объект. Объект с увеличивающей яркостью проходил по отношению к нашему кораблю. Так, и если мы имели вот понятие Земли, то вот где-то с курсовым углом так 20 да, на 200.
Принято. Форму вы его так не можете описать?
Нет, видите, яркая звезды. Вот как яркая звезда на уровне так теннисного мяча.
On the following mission, Vladimir Kovalyonok was aboard the Salyut 6 station together with flight engineer Savinik. On May 5, 1989, something occurred that remains completely inexplicable.
I glanced toward the porthole. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing myself.
A strange object was flying alongside the spacecraft in Earth orbit. The object resembled either a shuttle or a melon in shape. At its front was a semi-transparent cone, like a casing or sheath. Commander Kovalyonok called out to flight engineer Savinik, asking him to hand over the camera. But while Savinik was searching for it, the UFO changed its form.
I began to observe the object, assuming it truly was an object, and it appeared to change shape, narrowing at its center, forming something like a pronounced waist. And when Viktor Petrovich approached, what followed was a double explosion.
The object split in two. From that moment on, two spheres continued flying, connected by a narrow bridge. Vladimir made an entry in the onboard log and sketched the unusual phenomenon in his diary. The entire observation lasted 3 minutes. Later, the cosmonaut compared the time of the incident with data recorded on Earth.
The onboard instruments registered a fairly strong radiation spike. Where did it come from? That, most likely, no one knows. Who sent us this greeting? An intelligent meteor, perhaps. Something that wanted to make contact. You understand what I'm talking about?
What exactly occurred at that moment, as noted in the flight log, has remained a mystery. Just like the destruction of the Almaz 1 orbital station, launched into space in April 1973, it broke apart into 3 sections. The official explanation was a meteor strike. Yet, throughout the entire history of spaceflight, a meteor has only once caused minor damage, a small puncture in the solar panel of the Mir station. Pavel Popovich, a legendary cosmonaut from the very first cosmonaut corps, who trained alongside Gagarin, flew twice into space. Once aboard Vostok in 1962, and again aboard Soyuz 14 in 1974. A 2-time hero of the Soviet Union, he spent nearly 20 days in orbit.
Personally, this was the only time in my life I encountered something so inexplicable that no explanation could be given.
But his encounter with the unexplained did not occur in space. Popovich observed a UFO through the window of a passenger aircraft. He was flying from Washington to Moscow.
And then suddenly, I noticed it again. I looked out through the porthole. We were flying at an altitude of approximately 10,200 meters. Above us, about 1,500 meters higher, moving on a parallel course, was a triangle, a perfect isosceles triangle. Extremely bright, intensely white.
Returning with a delegation from the Academy of Sciences, the scientists aboard watched a glowing triangular object and attempted to construct explanations. The object circled the airliner and disappeared from view only an hour later, yet no one on board was able to determine what it was.
It was an unidentified flying object, but it could not be compared to anything else. It bore absolutely no resemblance to an aircraft. A triangular aircraft simply cannot fly like that.
In the 1990s, Pavel Popovich became the head of the All-Union Logical Association, which focused on the study of extraterrestrial life forms. Far from being ridiculed, his interest received support at the highest levels. The KGB sent Pavel Romanovich an entire folder of UFO reports, but it never reached him.
The blue folder consisted of KGB documents that were declassified in the 1990s on the direct order of the deputy chairman of the KGB, Nikolai Shamov. These materials were released at the request of what was, at the time, the country's largest organization devoted to the study of UFOs. The request came from the Union's central office and was formally addressed to the KGB itself.
The fate of these documents from the so-called blue folder proved grim. They were sold to Western intelligence services by an enterprising KGB employee for just 500 German marks. Some of the materials later surfaced in the Western press. Years later, researcher Mikhail Gerstein managed to return the documents to their homeland. They turned out to be truly sensational. They confirmed that a special decree of the Central Committee of the Communist Party had indeed existed, according to which all security agencies and intelligence services of the Soviet Union conducted a large-scale covert operation for many years, dedicated to the search for and study of unidentified flying objects. The scientific oversight of this operation was carried out by the Institute of Space Research.
Many of the reports I examined later came from both the Ministry of Defense and the Academy of Sciences. These institutions did not merely collect the data, they produced thorough, highly detailed analytical assessments.
Former military unit commander, Lieutenant General Alexei Savin, took part in a highly unusual experiment. He claims he was given an ultra-secret assignment to establish contact with extraterrestrial beings and deliver to them a list of questions from the government.
We were given strict conditions. We were not to take photographs, record video, or document anything of that sort. But we were young, and in truth, we hadn't planned to do so anyway. What mattered most to us was to be certain that we had not made contact with imposters, but with representatives of another civilization.
According to General Savin, the contact took place near Moscow. There were 4 representatives on the military side. The visitors themselves selected the participants. As Alexei Yuryevich, a direct witness to the events, recounts, on that day a flying saucer landed in a field. Beings emerged from it, strikingly similar to humans. They were dressed in clothing resembling our own. The commander of the extraterrestrial crew was courteous and friendly.
The only thing that distinguished them from ordinary people were their unnaturally precise facial features. Their speech was monotone, slightly higher in frequency range than normal. Yet the interaction itself was friendly. They behaved in an open and welcoming manner. After the initial introduction, and in accordance with the agreement we had, they shared a little about their way of life. They spoke of how many of them were present on Earth and what exactly they were studying, and then they invited us aboard their spacecraft.
Several days later, the visitors scheduled another meeting. 2 female employees of a secret department were instructed to attend. The group arrived at the location specified by the extraterrestrials. The escorts remained at the forest's edge near the road, while the women were led to a clearing where the alien craft stood.